doing the pressure. Oh, yeah, I've been wanted this.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. This is Brad, and I'm with my beautiful wife, Tiffany. Good morning, Tiffany.
Good morning.
We are the host of the Hustle and Flow podcast, just brought to you this morning. We're going to be talking about in-laws and maybe outlaws. I don't know. But we're definitely going to be talking about in-laws this morning, and it's something that if you're married, it's an important topic, and you might want to tune in a little bit more. Good morning, Tiffany. What's happening your way?
Just been a exciting week. Olympics have started. I am a little mad and sad. They have introduced breaking and
what?
Breaking, like breakdancing.
Breakdancing, okay.
And I never knew this was going to be a thing because I have missed my shot. I would have been preparing, getting ready, because who would have ever thought this was going to be part of the Olympics one day? And here I am. This gets announced. I'm obviously not ready, not prepared to. But there's all kinds of new things.
Well, but breakdancing, let's talk about that for a second, because I grew up in the 80s, man. The 80s was the epicenter of breakdancing. And I don't know if I told you this or not. This is an important thing. I bought a breakdancing book in 1985 when I was with my grandmother one day. And so I went home and tried to teach myself how to do the windmill, how to do the worm. I can do the worm. I did it one night when the power went out. My kids were filming me doing the worm. Never could get the windmill down. I think they had some cardboard that they were sliding around on. I wasn't cool enough, and definitely wasn't coordinated enough to be a good break dancer. But man, I'll tell you what, breakdancing back in the 80s was a real deal.
But if you would have kept your book, if you would have stuck with it, this could have been your time to shine.
That could have been my pivot moment that we just talked about. Yeah. Could have been my pivot moment. Could have been a break dancer. But no. There's a lot of new events. What other events were you telling me about?
Surfing, skateboarding, sport climbing.
Yeah.
I think that's a combination of climbing. But yeah, there's some new things in there. Of course, like, we lift weights a lot.
Yeah.
And so that's exciting. I heard some people at the gym this morning talking about numbers that some of these guys were putting up that were lifting. But yeah, so lots of new exciting things, and that's underway right now. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, hey, good morning. Thank you for listening to us. We're going to talk this morning. We're just going to hop right in and talk about in-laws. Let's just tell me about your in-laws, Tiffany.
Well, this is funny because if you ask couples, tell me about your in-laws, because family systems are so different and so diverse, they are likely not going to have. I'm going to guess they're not going to have the same answer. Like, because I can say, this is what I think about my in-laws, and then you may say, well, this is what I think about my in-laws, because they're just two different people, so it wouldn't be the same answer. Not that either answer is bad, but it's just they're going to be different, different people.
Right.
But no, I have great in-laws. My in-laws have always been great. And I know we'll talk about it later. I am absolutely not, shadow of a doubt, not who they would have chose for you. I was not who they were praying for because you were raised in a Christian home. Your dad was a pastor. When your parents were praying for your wife, I am not who was popping in their head. I am 100% certain of that. However, there is hope. There is good news. I am 100% now who they think is the best partner for you.
Yeah.
But I like, just like for us, I came into the marriage. I was not a Christian when we started dating. I dressed like I was going to the club when you would take me to your daddy's church. He was pastoring his little Baptist church, and they all had dresses on. Well, you told me I had to wear a dress. Well, I did.
Yeah, you did.
It just wasn't.
Hey.
It wasn't.
That's what I was praying for.
Yeah, that's what you were praying for. I did. I wore the dress. But then I think they were like, we don't wear pants here, but girl, if you want to wear pants, it's okay. But so it's just funny because, like I have great in-laws, but I know that it probably took some getting used to for them to get used to me. But on the flip, it took some getting used to for me to get used to them.
Right.
Yeah, because they weren't what I was used to either.
Well, tell me about that. I mean, and again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but just tell me about that, because that's a good thought.
Your family dynamic was different than mine. Like y'all all sat and had dinner around the table. Like y'all, it's like y'all were trying to replicate the dang Crosbys or the Ingalls family or something. I'm like, what is this? Like, why are y'all like sitting here like all being all chatty and eating dinner together, and we're all going to talk about our day? And it was just a strange phenomenon that I was not used to. So, I mean, you know, that's a thing, is that, you know, you all got to get used to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's, you know, in-laws it's a funny thing, because like you said, each family dynamic is different.
Right.
It is. And I said this last night to you. I would dare say that most people that your son or your daughter bring home are probably not who you would choose for your son or your daughter. And they usually, what was it we did? We did a couple, 3 weeks ago, opposites attract.
Right.
And, you know, mama wants a sweet, kind, quiet girl for her and I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking, she wants, you know, but then all of a sudden you bring home loud,
Tiffany.
you bring home loud New Yorker. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, and it's like, wow. And then like, but even on the converse, I don't know that I'm what your mom and daddy wanted for you.
No, because you were too goody two shoes for sure, and so that was an issue too. Like that they had to get used to you because you were a little, you know, you were different probably than what they were thinking of for me. But when you said that, like I would say that like most people, you know, most people that your kids bring home are not who you, and it's not necessarily because they're good or bad. It's just that like you know your kid and you think, how in the world is that ever going to work? Is what you look at it sometimes and think, and that's what I'm sure when your parents looked at us, thought, how in the world is that ever going to work?
No, they probably didn't say. They probably said that would never work.
That would never work. Yeah, that's it too. I mean, you know, that'll never work. So because it's different. Like when you're a parent and you marry somebody and they bring their kids, you know, you love those kids like your own, your stepkids or whatever, and same thing. But spouses getting, you know, your kids getting married and bringing somebody home, that's different. That's a different, like, you got to learn to, you know, love, accept, and figure it all out. And I think it takes time for them to, you know, for parents to love their daughter-in-laws and sons-in-laws like their own, and vice versa. Like, that ain't your mama. So it does take some time for you to love your mama-in-law like your mama.
Yeah.
Or your daddy-in-law like your daddy. Yeah.
Yeah, and to receive from them either way.
Yeah.
Because it's an adjustment. It is an adjustment. Because here's the thing. You and I go home together. And so we have to build our life and our relationship. But then when you add the dynamic of my mom and dad or your mom and dad or whomever, it changes. So here's the thing. In-laws can be the blessing on your life, or they can be cancer to your bones.
Yeah.
And that's coming from Papa and Honey that have 2 married kids. And it's not easy sometimes. I love my son-in-laws, but sometimes I want to thump my son-in-laws on the head. I want to thump my daughters on the head. And I'm sure that my son-in-law's mamas want to thump my daughters on the head sometimes, because it's because you have an idea of what you want for your kid. And so it gets weird sometimes. But I can tell you, it can be the best blessing, or it can be cancer to your bones. Because here's some things. Here's how you know if your in-laws are affecting your relationship. One way is that you spend a lot of time in your marriage talking about your mama or your in-laws. If you spend a lot of time as a married couple always talking about the in-laws, or always talking about your mama or your daddy or my mama or my daddy, there's a good chance they may be affecting your relationship.
Well, yeah, Mama said.
Mama said.
Or my daddy said.
Ooh.
You know, yeah.
And my daddy used to say a lot. My daddy used to tell me a whole bunch of things about how life needed to be and what I needed to do, you know. And so that was one of the things. But going back to is that you have to put your marriage first.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to put your marriage first, and especially when you fresh get married, it's hard to not go over to Mom and Them's every day because you used to live there and you love Mom and Them and you want to be at Mom and Them's house. Well, you're married now. It's time to go home with the person that you said I do to at the altar.
But what if they can't cook?
Yeah, I mean, you married a boy, you married a girl, you married whoever you married. Y'all got to go home together now.
Right.
Mom and Them need to, to meet you on the front porch and go, you've been over here 2 nights this week. You got to go home.
It's
time to go,
Go home.
You got to go home. If they can't cook, there's TikTok, YouTube, all those things. Learn to cook together. If your wife cannot cook or your man cannot cook, then learn to cook together because, that's who you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And you got to start learning how to do that and put your marriage first.
Well, and that's it. Biblically, the Bible says that you've got to basically tear away from your family. And you got to create your own family. Okay, so you're no longer, you're no longer on your mama's teat. You got to break off of that. You got to move on, and you are. If you're a man, you're now responsible for your wife. You're not responsible to your mama anymore. Now, there's a filial obligation that we can talk about at some point, as far as taking care of them in their age. Okay, but what your mom and daddy does, that's their business, and it's not yours. As a husband, it's your job to take care of your wife, and as a wife, it's your job to take care of your husband. And it's not what your mom and dad. So you have to put your marriage first, because now you have a family, even though you're part of a family, and you have to set some boundaries. We talked about that too.
Yeah, I think you do have to set boundaries, and whatever that looks like for your house. We didn't ever really have this. I know this happens. It wasn't an issue for us, but as an example, for instance, if you are a mom-in-law, don't do this. But Mama drops by all the time and just walks in the house and does whatever she wants while she's there. Like, well, as a married couple, you may have to say, like, hey, let's have some scheduled visits. Call before you come. Make sure it's a good time. Make sure we don't have plans. Make sure we weren't walking out the door for date night, like whatever. But that's just an example. Like, whatever the things are, set some boundaries. Your parents are not going to be allowed to get in our finances. If your parents are not paying for anything that you paying for you anymore, then your parents don't need to ask, how much your car payment is and how much are you making and all those other things, and make some decisions that parents are going to stay out of certain things. That those are no fly zones for your parents.
Absolutely. And I'll say this though, if your parents are still paying your phone bill, are they paying your car insurance? They may have a right there to say, hey buddy, I saw you went on a vacation last week. You think you could take care of your phone bill this month? Oh no, man, I can't do that, man. Here's the deal. Gary Vee said it. Gary Vee, if you know Gary Vee, I love Gary Vee. Gary Vee said, if your parents pay for anything, you keep their name out of your mouth when it comes to finances. That they got every right to ask you a question if they pay one bill. If they pay for, he went as far to say, if your name is on the Netflix account and you use their Netflix account, they can ask you a question about your money. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty deep there.
Yeah.
But you got to set some boundaries. You got to set some boundaries.
Set boundaries. And then I think when parents, when there's a parent, an offending parent, that's breaking those things or anything, I think that you need to be the one to discuss it. If that's your mama, then you need to talk to your mama and say, hey, mama, this is causing a little bit of an issue. Or do you think you could help us with this? Like, you need to.
Mama ain't gonna like it though. Most mamas ain't gonna like it.
Yeah, but when it comes to your parents, like, you need to handle your business, because you do a disservice to your spouse when you don't cover them, protect them, and help keep those fences firm. And when you're not the one to say, okay, if this is important to you, then let's talk this out, and then I'll go to Mom and Them, and we're going, and I'll talk about this. Don't make your spouse be the bad guy because you keep letting things go because you love Mama. You don't want to hurt Mama's feelings, but Mama's hurting your spouse's feelings. But don't make your spouse be the bad guy. They've got to be the one to go, talk to Mama or Daddy.
Absolutely.
About it. Yeah.
And hey guys, I'm gonna say this from 34 years. If you get on the phone with your mama and you let your mama talk about your wife, you got a problem. You need to shut that crap down and say, you will not talk about my wife that way. and you need to shut it down. And you don't need to be a party to making your spouse look bad or feel bad and make your mama feel better. And listen, I love my mama. I can tell you right now, I'll fight you for my mama. But I'm not going to let my mama talk about my wife. Because I'm going to address that.
Well, and even not on the phone, like in-laws, I have great ones. Mine did not do this, but I hear the stories, in-laws that make little disparaging comments about parenting styles and, oh, so you didn't work enough this week. Like just whatever it is, like you can't let your parents make disparaging comments not even just on the phone, to your spouse's face or around them, to other relatives or whatever. Like you got to shut that down. Shut it down. And don't make your wife or your husband have to go and address it with their in-laws. You handle it. It's your mama. You know how your mama ticks. You know how your daddy ticks. You need to handle it. And I've had to handle some things with my mom and daddy before. Even in regards to you, when we were younger, I've had to say, nope, we're not going to do that. And I didn't want to. I'm just going to be the first to admit I didn't want to, because I didn't want to hurt my mom or my daddy, because I love them. But at some point, I had to realize that the nucleus of my new family that God had given me superseded my family I came from. Yeah. And so there's that. You also have to let go of some expectation. You're not going to control other people. You're not. My daddy going to say what my daddy's going to say sometime. And you're not going to control RD. That's what we call him. You're not going to control RD. And you got to have an idea. You may have an idea what you want the perfect mother-in-law to be. What was the movie that had J-Lo in it? Monster-in-Law. Monster-in-Law. Yeah. And there's some true monster-in-laws out there. Yes. But you may have unrealistic expectations of what your mother-in-law or father-in-law is going to be. And I mean this, I try to be a good father-in-law. It's not easy sometimes because I'm still a man. I still have my ideas of what I think I want, and what I think's right, and what I want for my daughters. But I try to be a good father-in-law. I try to hug my son-in-laws, let them know I love them, and try to be that guy. But I don't know what their expectation is for me for a father-in-law. They may want me just to leave them alone. I don't know. But you've got to let go of expectation. Yeah. I think the other thing, you got to be flexible. You can't be so rigid in your life that you don't allow room for the in-laws. Right. And even if you don't like them, you have to make room to let them come around. And I said this, we were talking about last night, that you have to find a way as much as possible to let them be part of your life. Because you married their daughter or you married their son, and they still love them. So you can't just shut them out. No, you're not coming. You ain't coming. Well, I don't want to see y'all. You got to let them be as much a part of your life as possible. Now look, let's shoot it straight. Some in-laws are toxic. Some in-laws are problematic. Some in-laws are problems, and you do have to set those boundaries. So what else do you have to do? Well, I think, though, that there will probably be people listening and say, okay, well, my in-laws don't come around. They never they don't have anything really to do with us or whatever. And that's not really an unrealistic expectation. It's just an expectation, period. And you just sometimes have to let those expectations go. Mm-hmm. So you're not hurt, that your wife's dad never calls or comes around, or, your husband's, mom doesn't ever check on him if something's going on or whatever. You have to let those expectations go also, and just, try to always have another perspective and consider how people were raised and what their relationships are like. But then, if you do have family that does want to be involved, you do have to, once a month, go to dinner. Say, okay, on birthdays, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get together on birthdays. Y'all are going to be invited. Find ways to include them, because even though there's the cleaving away, that doesn't mean, though, that your spouse stops being your in-law's child. Yeah, they still want to see them. Absolutely. And, they've raised them this whole time and been with them this whole time. So they still want to be a part of their life. And you don't want to be the reason ever to pull them away or to be jealous, and not allow them to be part of their parents' life anymore. Right. And I think another thing, too, when it comes to in-laws, you've got to avoid hot topics. Yeah. You do. You can be the bigger person.
And I'll just use this as an example. I'm not trying to be political, other than just to say, if you walk in and your in-laws have a Trump sign out front, and they are wearing a Trump shirt, and they got a Trump hat on, and the news is on Fox News, you probably don't want to get into politics. If you are a Democrat, or maybe you're RFK independent, you don't really want to get into that. Who cares? At the end of the day, we're family. Your opinion's your opinion. You can vote for who you want to vote for. I'm going to vote for who I want to vote for. We can do whatever we want to do. But at the end of the day, I still got to be your in-law. And so avoid hot topics. If you know there's certain things that's going to set people off, you can be the bigger person.
Yeah, and I would say there, life is short, and your parents are not going to live forever.
That's right.
There are some things that are not worth the fight, and they are not hills worth dying on.
No.
And so, and some of those are, politics, or just different views on things that don't really
even church.
matter.
There's
different denominations. Like, we're Baptists and y'all are Methodists, and we don't have to fight about which one of us is going to heaven every time that we're together. Like, there's so many things that are not. And this is a thing that I've learned, and that my kids are probably learning about us. The older your parents get and your in-laws get, you're not changing them probably.
No.
So, like, there's no reason to have animosity and divisiveness. Like, just walk around it and keep going. Walk through the hot topic and keep going. Sidestep it and move on.
You just said that, and there's something that actually just kind of went off in my mind. The older you get, the older our parents get, you're not going to change us. But here's what I've learned. I shut up now.
Yeah.
I still believe what I believe. I still think the way I think, but I shut up now. And I realized that about my dad. My dad is opinionated. I love my dad. He's a tough guy, but he's opinionated. But the older he's gotten, he shuts up a whole lot more now. And I bet he's thinking, when we leave, he's thinking, that's the stupidest bunch of stupid stuff. But you know what? It goes back to what you said. Life is short. If you want to burn bridges and blow things up all the time, and you want to create chaos, and you want to have drama in your family all the time, then just keep on. But what you're going to find is, the older you get, the more valuable relationships are.
Yeah.
Because you don't know when those relationships are going to end. You don't know what tomorrow looks like. We buried my cousin Sunday. He was 36, and nobody said he wasn't expected to die, but last Tuesday he died. And if you'd had drama, and that's the thing we keep going back to. I think the value of relationships, even with your in-laws, you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree with everything they say or do, and they don't have to agree with you, but there's such a value in a relationship, because that's where change happens. Change happens in relationships. It's not in Facebook posts. I see people posting all the time, and you've seen it this past week or two, about all the junk. You're not going to change my mind by posting what somebody else said. I don't care. I believe how I believe. I think how I think, and this is just kind of that stuff. But the value of the relationship is, I care about whom I'm in interaction with, and that's powerful. And I do think you also avoid the hot topics. I think another thing is that you have to find some common ground. I will be honest with you. I told you this. It was funny. I took my two son-in-laws and my son we went and watched the Grizzlies play. It's been a year or so, 2 years ago maybe. And we were on our way to Memphis to watch the Grizzlies play. And some new game had come out. All right. I'm a gamer because I grew up in the 80s with Nintendos and Segas. And I still play. I'm an NCAA football guy. And I still love that stuff. But some game had come out. I don't know what it was. But son, Cade, Robbie, and Easton were geeking out about this game, and I'm lost. I ain't got no clue what they're talking about. It's the most boring, dumb stuff to me. But I tried to find some common ground. I would ask questions about it and things like that to try to foster some kind of common ground with the in-laws.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. But I think finally, and we're getting toward the end here, but I think one of the things is that you have to be kind. It costs you zero to be kind.
Yeah.
What if they're not kind to you? Does not matter. Be kind. What's the old Roadhouse? Roadhouse, one of my favorite movies. Not the new one. The new one sucks. Patrick Swayze, the old one, man. He said when he comes in, he's the bouncer. He said, "Look, we got to be cool." He said, "If people don't," he said, "but you got to be nice." He said, "If people won't walk, you walk them, but you be nice." You remember what one of the guys said? He said, "Well, what if he calls my mama a whore?" And he said, "Well, is she?" He said, "You got to be nice." And I think it comes back to this: you have to be kind in every relationship, and especially when it comes to your in-laws, because the in-laws are not naturally inclined. They're not naturally inclined to love you because you're not their child. But why do you think that in-laws are motivated to get along with you?
Well, I think they want to get along with you because they want to maintain. Until you said they're not naturally motivated.
I'm not saying they can't love you, but that's not natural because you're not the kid.
It's not always off. That's it. It's not off the bat. It takes time to develop that. It may take years and years to develop that. So in the meantime, in-laws are going to be motivated to get along with you, and they want to get along with you because they want to stay connected to their child. And
that's
if
right.
you have kids, they want to stay connected to their grandkids. So they're not out to always, I've tried to talk from both sides of this today. They're not always out to get you.
Right.
Because they want to be in relationship and to stay in relationship with their kid and to see their grandkids and all those things.
Yeah, because I can't imagine not seeing my granddaughter.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to blow that relationship up because I love her. And my grandson, who's going to be born tomorrow, I can't imagine not having a relationship with him. And I'm not willing to burn a bridge with my son-in-law so I don't get to see my daughters anymore because I can tell you this. More than anything, a woman can take a man away from his family more than a man can take a woman away from hers.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So you need to be careful.
Yeah.
To blow those relationships up.
Yeah, but and again, you have to remember is like you're not their child. It's taking some time. They want to see how you're going to treat their child, and so it takes a little bit of time sometimes for that love to grow and develop to where you are like their own. And I know that your parents love me like their own. Like I have no doubt. And like my son-in-laws, they've that's grown and that's deepened. And sometimes I like my son-in-laws better than my daughters.
Ooh, me too.
Yeah, and I will definitely take up. I'll tell my daughters like, stop that right now. You're not, don't act that way. Quit acting ugly or being ugly. Act right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I do love my son-in-laws, but it grows, more and more with time, I think.
I think so too. And here's the thing that probably nobody says, but everybody experiences is that sometimes you feel competitive with the other in-laws. Because if the grandbaby goes over there, well, she done been over there 3 days. We ain't got to see her but one day, or they go over there and eat with her every Sunday, but they don't come eat with us on Sunday, and it's that competitiveness, man.
They always hang out with their family, or they go on vacations, and we are not able to do that. Yeah, there does become some competitiveness, I think, sometimes with them. And probably I have not really, all my kids live here. And so I can't imagine the sting also of if I lived several states away, but my kids got to see the other in-laws and spend time with them all the time. And, that does happen. You hate for it to happen, but it does happen.
It does. It absolutely does. But, I think that, and we're going to talk, one thing that we're actually going to introduce is that we're going to do some live Facebook podcasting from our place downtown. And Mike's going to help us put that together. And one of the things we're going to talk about is being a grandparent.
Yeah, grandparent.
And grandparenting. And
I gathered up lots of information when I'd put out a Facebook post about that. Lots of comments and concerns and because I think that there's, even with in-laws, there's things sometimes that you wish somebody else would say because you don't want to burn bridges, you don't want to hurt feelings. So I think you have to talk about this. If you're an in-law, you need to listen to this stuff. If you're, if you are the daughter-in-law, the son-in-law, you need to listen to it because it just helps strengthen that relationship.
I think so too. And I'll say this, from an in-law perspective, you need to be friends with the other in-laws.
Yeah.
As much as you can. You need to talk to them. You need to be kind to them. You need to have a relationship with them. It doesn't need to be us versus them.
Right.
Because that is just poison. It is poison for the relationship because your grandkids will pick up on that. Your son-in-law or your daughter-in-law will pick up on that, and they'll see that there's that block. Now, listen, I'm not saying you got to be best friends and vacation together because every family is different, but I can tell you there needs to be a modicum of respect for the other in-laws, and you need to, because every family is different. Just because you were you grew up the Leave It to Beaver family, and they grew up like in the wild like wolves, they still have their own system of life too, and you have to learn how to coexist.
Yeah. Well, like your parents, my mom doesn't have anywhere to go on holidays, and I'm an only child. So, my birth order and how the importance of me and my family's side is that I'm the only child. There's nobody else but me, but my mom has nowhere to go on holidays. I'm it. And so your mom, they do a great job of including my mother to come over for holidays. And this last time, I think, whatever we did last, my mom said that your mom had already texted her and asked her to come over. But, and then that makes me feel good and feel even more kind towards my mother-in-law that she includes my mom.
Yeah.
Because that takes the guilt, the burden and the guilt off me of feeling torn. Like, okay, everybody's going to your mom's house for 4th of July, but my mom's going to be sitting at home, and you feel torn sometimes. And so, providing, trying to reach out to the other in-laws and to build those relationships, it helps your kids too. That they don't have to be stressed out on birthdays of how everybody's going to interact and just different things like that. It helps. And I know that we're like this. Whatever we can do our kids to have strong marriages and to have strong families, we want to do our part in that.
Absolutely. Because I don't want my girls, right now they're the only 2 that are married out of my 4. I don't want them to get a divorce.
Yeah.
I want them to work it out, because I know that 34 years into this thing, I was an idiot back in my 20s. And if I had continued to be an idiot and not changed, then we wouldn't be married. But I know that what I have now at 52, I wouldn't trade it. You couldn't give me anything on earth to trade for what I have. But I didn't know that when I was 27. I didn't know that when I was 33. And so I want my kids to fight to stay married.
Yeah.
And I want to be an encouragement to that and make sure that we're part of that, Which
is something that, I think that we made a note of is, demonstrate the behavior that you want them to emulate. Mm-hmm. And that's it. What kind of in-laws do we want our kids to be? And grandparents do we want our kids to be? And so whatever we're doing now as the in-laws, we're responsible to also still model what that looks like. We've tried to, when we're raising them, we're trying to model what parents look like and what husband and wife looks like. Now that we're in-laws, we're responsible to emulate what does it look like to be a strong, healthy in-law in their life.
And that's not easy. So we're not here to tell you that we perfected that, because look, it's just not easy sometimes being an in-law. I'm not going to lie to you, but I love them. And it's just not easy, and so you do have to work through that, and you don't have to make. And I think this is the one thing that I took from our early part of our marriage. You don't have to make it impossible for your kids. Well, I hated Christmas because everybody, I had to be at your mother's at a certain time, then I had to go to my mother's, and the next day we had to go back to your mother's, and then we had to go to my mother's, and then we had to go to my grandmother's, and we had, and I can tell you, if you're as an in-law, you need to let your kids set their own traditions. And if they get to be a part of your stuff, great. Your stuff does not supersede their stuff. You need to allow them to build their own family and have their own traditions.
Yeah.
So what were you going to say?
One thing I would say that we didn't talk about as much, but don't be the reason that your in-laws don't like your parents don't like your spouse. There's some things that need to be kept at home. You don't need to tell your mama every fault your husband has, especially if there's some big ones and you're going to work it out and move on. You may forget, and y'all may go out on date night next Friday night and everything's wonderful, but mama didn't forget and daddy didn't forget. So you don't need to tell your mom and them everything that happens in your house if you know it's going to put your spouse in a bad way, because again, you forgive and forget. You're married to them. You're supposed to. You're supposed to figure out how to make it work. But don't make it to where mom and daddy's got to side-eye your spouse at lunch because you overshared stuff that you didn't need to be oversharing about. Like, don't make things, don't always talk about all the negative things. Your mom and daddy don't need to be who you vent to about every issue you have with your spouse. You got to find a girlfriend at work that's going to take it to her grave. Your mom and daddy don't need to be who you do that to.
No, because that is not a healthy thing.
It's not.
Because I can tell you, as a father, your father, as a daughter, if you tell your father stuff, he's constantly thinking of how he can create a trip and fall situation for his son-in-law. You know what I'm saying? Because they're still your dad, and they still see you as small, and they still see you as somebody they got to protect, and they want to like give him a headbutt or give him an elbow to the. So you need to be smart and not let your parents be your parents, not your confidants.
Yeah.
You know, there's a caveat to some of that. You do,
Yeah.
you know, if you need help, there's things like that you can share. But if your husband or wife is just making you mad, shut up. Keep it to yourself. Don't tell your mama, because your mama's going to tell everybody else. Not that you do, but your mama's going to tell every sibling and everybody else. Your daddy's not going to say it. He's just going to think it. So you got to be careful.
Yeah.
And so I think that as we get ready to finish, any final words here about in-laws?
Nope. Love them. Be kind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it. I think the bottom line is it costs zero to be kind.
Yeah.
You can be the bigger person and be kind. And especially if you're a Christian, you got God on the inside of you, you have the ability to be kind. And that's what matters. It's the goodness of God that leads men to repentance. It's not you always having to speak your mind or your attitude or your opinion.
Right.
Amen? Yep. Good stuff. Good stuff. Hey, thank you so much for listening. Listen. Yep. Go ahead.
Marriage conference. We have a marriage conference in September. I think that's the 6th and the 7th. Excited about that. If you're interested, there's links in the bottom. This is our second annual one. Last year was phenomenal. We're building off that, and we would love for you to be a part.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Be looking for that. Thank you so much for listening. Hey, listen, if you are going in a direction you want to go, find a group of people that are going where you want to go and hop in the flow with them, and you'll get where you're going. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great morning.
Hey. Yeah, let's see how you do under pressure. Oh. Yeah, I've been wanting this forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up.